The cargo freighter Stellar Mercy groaned like a dying beast as another massive wave crashed against its hull. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped the bridge railing, her knuckles white against the metal as the ship listed dangerously to starboard. The storm on Kepler 442b had come from nowhere, turning what should have been a routine supply run into a nightmare of biblical proportions. Hull breach in sections 12 through 15. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen's voice crackled through the intercom, barely audible over the howling wind and the screech of tearing metal. We're taking on water faster than the pumps can handle. Elena's dark eyes swept across the chaos of her bridge. Sparks flew from damaged consoles while her crew fought desperately to keep their ship afloat. The Stellar Mercy wasn't built for this kind of punishment. She was a reliable workhorse designed to ferry supplies between human colonies, not to survive the apocalyptic storms that plagued this godforsaken water world. "Emergency power to the pumps," Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "And get me a damage report from all sections." The ship shuddered violently as another wave, easily 50 meters high, slammed into them. Through the viewports, Elena could see nothing but roiling black water and sheets of rain that fell like bullets. The planet's twin moons pulled at the ocean with gravitational forces that created storms lasting for weeks. They'd been caught in the worst one in recorded history. "Captain, we've lost contact with the lower cargo holds," reported Lieutenant Sarah Park from her communication station. Her usually perfect uniform was soaked with sweat and seawater that had somehow found its way onto the bridge. "The intercom system is failing and half our sensors are offline." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, running through their options. They were 3 days from the nearest port, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. The Stellar Mercy was carrying medical supplies for the Outer Rim colonies, but all of that would be worthless if they didn't survive the next few hours. "Ma'am," called Ensign James Wright from the navigation console, his young face pale with terror. "I'm reading massive structural stress throughout the ship. If we take another hit like that last one..." He didn't need to finish. They all knew what would happen. The Stellar Mercy would break apart like a toy, scattering her crew and cargo across the endless ocean of Kepler 442b. A new sound cut through the storm's fury, something that made Elena's blood run cold. It was a low, rhythmic creaking that seemed to come from the very bones of the ship. Metal fatigue. The hull was beginning to fail. "All hands, this is the captain," Elena announced over the ship's PA system. "Prepare for emergency evacuation procedures. Move to your assigned life pod stations and await further orders." But even as she gave the command, Elena knew it was likely futile. The life pods were designed for space rescue, not the savage seas of an alien world. In these conditions, launching them would be tantamount to suicide. The ship lurched again, and this time Elena heard something that chilled her more than the storm itself. It was faint, almost lost in the chaos, but unmistakably there. A sound that didn't belong to the dying ship or the raging elements. It was organic, desperate, and utterly alien. A cry for help. "Did anyone else hear that?" Elena asked, turning to her crew. But their faces showed only confusion and fear. The sound came again, clearer this time, and Elena realized it was coming from below, somewhere in the flooded sections of the ship. "Lieutenant Park, I need you to boost the internal sensors," Elena commanded. "Something's alive down there." "Captain, with respect, we need to focus on evacuation." Marcus Chen's voice came through the intercom again. "I've got reports of flooding in sections 8 through 20. We've got maybe 30 minutes before this ship goes under." But Elena couldn't shake the sound from her mind. It wasn't human, that much was certain. But there was something in that alien cry that transcended species boundaries, pure desperate fear, the universal language of a creature facing death. "Sarah, scan the cargo manifest," Elena ordered. "What were we carrying in the lower holds?" Lieutenant Park's fingers flew over her waterlogged console. Medical supplies, terraforming equipment, and... She paused, her eyes widening. "Captain, there's something here that wasn't on the original manifest. A xenobiology research specimen, classified cargo from the Titan research station." Elena's heart pounded. Xenobiology meant alien life, and classified cargo meant something the brass didn't want the general public to know about. Whatever was down there, it was important enough to warrant secrecy. The cry came again, weaker this time, and Elena made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone else. Instead of heading for the life pods, she grabbed an emergency rebreather and started toward the flooded sections of the ship. "Captain, where are you going?" Wright called after her. "To save a life," Elena replied without looking back. "Park, you have the bridge. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, launch the pods. The corridors leading to the lower decks were already knee-deep in frigid seawater. Elena waded through the rising flood, her emergency light cutting through the darkness like a blade. The ship groaned around her, and she could feel the deck plates shifting beneath her feet. The Stellar Mercy was dying, and she was running out of time. As she descended deeper into the ship, the water rose to her waist, then her chest. The alien cries grew stronger, more desperate, guiding her through the maze of flooded passages. Whatever was down here, it was trapped and running out of air. Elena pushed through a partially collapsed doorway and found herself in cargo hold 15. Her light swept across floating debris and overturned containers until it landed on something that made her gasp. Trapped beneath a fallen support beam, partially submerged in the rising water, was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a large leopard, but its body was covered in pure white fur that seemed to glow in the darkness. Its limbs were twisted at impossible angles, clearly paralyzed from some injury, and its alien features were contorted with pain and terror. Most striking of all were its eyes, large and intelligent, filled with the kind of awareness that only comes from true sentience. The creature looked at Elena and made that same desperate sound she had heard from the bridge. In that moment she understood. This wasn't just an animal. This was a person as surely as any human, and it was begging for her help. Elena stared into those intelligent eyes and felt her heart break. The creature was clearly suffering, its white fur matted with blood and seawater. The fallen support beam had pinned its lower body, and from the way its limbs lay motionless, Elena could tell the damage was severe. But there was something in those alien features that spoke to her on a fundamental level. This being was afraid, not just of dying, but of dying alone. "I'm going to help you," Elena said softly, not knowing if the creature could understand her words, but hoping her tone would convey her intent. "Just hold on." The water was rising rapidly now, already lapping at the creature's chin. Elena estimated they had maybe 10 minutes before this section of the ship was completely flooded. She splashed over to the fallen beam, a massive piece of twisted metal that would normally require heavy machinery to move. But Elena had spent years in the merchant marine, and desperation gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. She planted her feet as firmly as she could on the shifting deck and heaved against the beam with everything she had. It didn't budge. The creature made another sound, softer this time, almost like resignation. Elena refused to accept it. "No," she growled, grabbing a piece of debris to use as a lever. "You're not dying on my watch." She wedged the makeshift lever under the beam and threw her full weight against it. The metal groaned but shifted slightly. The creature's eyes widened with something that might have been hope. Elena repositioned her lever and tried again, muscles straining against the impossible weight. This time the beam moved enough for the creature to pull one of its front limbs free, but its lower body remained trapped, and Elena could see that even if she freed it completely, the creature couldn't move on its own. Whatever had paralyzed it had left it completely helpless. The ship tilted again, more severely this time, and Elena heard the ominous sound of more hull plating giving way. Through the rushing water, she could hear her crew's voices echoing from the upper decks calling her name. They were looking for her, but she couldn't abandon this creature. Not when she was so close to saving it. Elena looked around the flooded cargo hold, her mind racing. She needed something to help her move both the beam and the creature. Her eyes fell on an emergency stretcher that had floated loose from its storage compartment. That could work to transport the creature, but she still needed to free it first. A new idea struck her. Instead of trying to lift the beam, maybe she could dig the creature out from underneath it. Elena dropped to her knees in the frigid water and began scooping away the debris and sediment that had accumulated around the creature's trapped body. Her hands quickly went numb in the cold water, but she kept digging. The creature watched her with growing amazement. In its eyes, Elena could see a kind of wonder, as if the concept of one species risking everything to save another was completely foreign to its experience. Elena wondered what kind of world this being came from, what kind of society that would make such altruism seem impossible. As she dug, Elena kept up a steady stream of reassuring words. "You're going to be okay. I don't know who you are or where you came from, but nobody deserves to die alone and afraid. We humans, we might not be the smartest or the strongest species in the galaxy, but we don't leave people behind. The creature's trapped body shifted slightly as Elena cleared away more debris. She could see now that its lower spine had been severely damaged, probably during the storm when the cargo containers had broken loose. But the creature was still alive, still aware, and that was what mattered. With a final desperate heave, Elena managed to pull the creature free from under the beam. It was completely limp from the waist down, confirming her fears about the paralysis, but it was breathing and conscious. Elena quickly maneuvered the emergency stretcher into position and carefully lifted the creature onto it. The being was heavier than it looked, its dense muscles speaking to evolution on a high-gravity world. Elena's back screamed in protest as she lifted, but she gritted her teeth and got the creature secured on the stretcher. Only then did she realize they faced an even bigger problem: getting out of the flooded section alive. The water was now chest-deep and rising fast. Elena tried to push the stretcher ahead of her through the flooded corridor, but the current was too strong. Every few feet she had to stop and brace herself against the walls to keep from being swept away. The creature lay still on the stretcher, but Elena could see its alien features twisted with concern. Not for itself, but for her. "Don't you worry about me," Elena panted as she struggled against the current. "I've been through worse than this." It was a lie, of course. She'd never been through anything remotely like this. But the creature didn't need to know that. The ship shuddered again, and Elena heard the awful sound of more hull sections failing. Through the emergency lighting, she could see that the corridor ahead was completely flooded. They'd have to swim for it. But how could she manage the stretcher and an unconscious creature? Elena made another split-second decision. She quickly lashed herself to the stretcher with emergency cord, ensuring that if one of them went down, they'd both go down together. Then she took a deep breath, activated her rebreather, and plunged into the flooded corridor. The water was shockingly cold, and the current immediately tried to tear the stretcher from her grip. Elena kicked hard, fighting against the rushing water while trying to keep the creature's head above the surface. The being's large eyes were wide with terror, but it seemed to understand what Elena was doing and remained perfectly still to avoid throwing off her balance. They made agonizingly slow progress through the flooded ship. Elena's lungs burned and her muscles screamed, but she refused to give up. Behind them, she could hear the groaning of metal as more sections of the Stellar Mercy collapsed. They were in a race against time, and Elena wasn't sure they were winning. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Elena saw light ahead. They'd reached the emergency stairwell that led to the upper decks. But the stairs were steep and slippery, and Elena wasn't sure she had the strength left to carry the creature up them. The creature made a soft sound and looked at Elena with those impossible eyes. In them, Elena saw something that transcended species: gratitude and a deep, abiding trust. This being had decided to put its life completely in her hands, and Elena would be damned if she was going to let it down. Elena gripped the handrails of the emergency stairwell and began the grueling climb to safety. Each step was torture. Her waterlogged boots slipped on the metal grating, and the stretcher seemed to gain weight with every meter they climbed. The creature lay perfectly still, its alien breathing shallow but steady, those pale eyes never leaving Elena's face. "Captain Rodriguez," Marcus Chen's voice echoed down the stairwell. "Elena, where the hell are you?" "Here," Elena gasped, her voice barely carrying over the sound of rushing water below. "I'm here and I'm not alone." Heavy footsteps clanged on the metal stairs above them. Marcus appeared at the next landing, his weathered face a mask of relief and disbelief. Behind him came Lieutenant Park and 2 other crew members, all of them staring in amazement at the alien creature on the stretcher. "Dear God, Captain," Marcus breathed, immediately moving to help support the stretcher. "What is that thing?" "Someone who needed help," Elena replied firmly. Together, they quickly carried the creature up to the relative safety of Deck 7. The alien's weight distributed among several people. The climb became manageable, though Elena could see the confusion and fear in her crew's faces. They reached the main corridor just as another massive wave struck the ship. The Stellar Mercy groaned like a wounded animal, and Elena could feel the deck plates buckling beneath their feet. They were running out of time. "Status report," Elena ordered as they moved toward the lifepod bay. "Hull integrity is at 15% and falling," Park reported. "We've sealed off everything below Deck 5, but it's only buying us minutes." The storm is getting worse and our distress beacon isn't getting through the interference. Elena looked down at the creature on the stretcher. Up here in better lighting, she could see more details that made her heart ache. The being's white fur was incredibly soft, almost like silk, and its features were strikingly beautiful despite the pain etched across them. There were what appeared to be natural markings around its eyes, delicate patterns that reminded Elena of the face paint worn by ancient warriors. But it was the creature's expression that struck her most. Despite its obvious agony and terror, there was an intelligence there that seemed almost human in its depth. When their eyes met, Elena felt a connection that transcended species barriers. This being understood exactly what was happening, understood that Elena had risked everything to save it, and the gratitude in those alien eyes was unmistakable. "The life pods," Elena said. "Are they ready for launch?" "All pods are prepped and ready, but Captain..." Marcus hesitated. "In these seas, they're death traps. The waves are too big, the wind's too strong. Even if we survive the launch, we'll be torn apart in minutes." Elena studied the tactical display showing the storm conditions outside. Marcus was right. Launching life pods in weather like this was suicide. But staying aboard the Stellar Mercy was equally suicidal. The ship was dying around them, and they had maybe 10 minutes before she went under completely. "What about the emergency beacon?" Elena asked. "Any response?" "Nothing," Park replied. "The storm is jamming all communications. Even if someone wanted to help us, they don't know where we are." The creature on the stretcher made a soft sound, and Elena looked down to see it trying to move one of its functional arms. With great effort, it managed to point toward a small device attached to what appeared to be a collar around its neck. The device was unlike anything Elena had ever seen, made of some kind of crystalline material that seemed to pulse with internal light. "What is it?" Elena asked, leaning closer. The creature's breathing was growing more labored, and she could see that its strength was fading fast. The being managed to tap the device with one finger, and suddenly the air around them filled with a complex series of sounds. Not quite music, not quite language, but something that seemed to combine elements of both. The crew stepped back in alarm, but Elena held her ground. The creature was trying to communicate something important. "It's some kind of communication device," Lieutenant Park realized. "But I've never seen technology like that." The alien sounds continued for several seconds, then stopped. The creature looked at Elena with desperate urgency, clearly trying to convey something crucial. Elena wished she could understand, but the alien language was completely foreign to her ears. Another massive impact shook the ship, and this time Elena heard the unmistakable sound of the hull cracking. They were out of time. "All hands to the life pods," Elena ordered. "We're abandoning ship." "Captain, what about?" Marcus gestured toward the creature. "It comes with us," Elena said without hesitation. "No one gets left behind." They quickly made their way to the life pod bay, carrying the stretcher between them. The normally spacious area was chaos, with crew members frantically preparing the small emergency vessels for launch. Each life pod was designed to hold 12 people, barely large enough for the essential supplies needed for space rescue. "Load the creature into Pod 3, Elena ordered. "I'll pilot it myself." "Captain, with respect, you should be in the command pod," Marcus protested. "Let me take this one." Elena shook her head. "I'm not letting it face this alone. It trusted me to save it, and I'm going to see this through." They carefully transferred the creature into Life Pod 3, securing the stretcher to the deck with emergency restraints. Elena climbed in after it, quickly running through the pre-launch checklist. Through the small viewport, she could see the raging ocean waiting for them, waves the size of buildings rolling endlessly toward the horizon. "All pods, prepare for emergency launch," Elena announced over the comm system. "Launch sequence will begin in 60 seconds. As she spoke, the Stellar Mercy tilted sharply to port, and Elena knew they'd run out of time. Through the hull, she could hear the sound of flooding reaching the upper decks. In moments, the ship would roll over and take them all down with it. "All pods, launch now!" Elena shouted. She slammed her palm down on the emergency launch button, and Life Pod 3 shot out of the dying ship like a bullet. Through the viewport, Elena caught a glimpse of the other pods launching into the storm, each one a tiny speck of hope against the overwhelming fury of the alien ocean. Then they hit the water, and Elena's world exploded into chaos. The life pod was tossed like a cork in a washing machine, spinning end over end as the massive waves battered its hull. Elena fought to maintain control, but the storm was far beyond anything the little pod was designed to handle. The creature on the stretcher was being thrown around despite the restraints, its injured body taking a terrible beating. Elena reached out and placed a protective hand on its chest, trying to shield it from the worst of the impacts. The being looked up at her with those remarkable eyes, and Elena saw something there that gave her strength. Absolute trust. The life pod spun through the savage waters like a child's toy. Elena gritted her teeth and fought with the controls, trying to keep their tiny vessel from being torn apart by the mountainous waves. Through the viewport, she caught brief glimpses of the other life pods struggling against the storm, some already disappearing beneath the churning surface. "Hold on," Elena whispered to the creature, though she wasn't sure if she was reassuring it or herself. The alien's breathing had become rapid and shallow, its pale features twisted with pain from the constant battering. A wave larger than the others lifted their pod high into the air, giving Elena a terrifying view of the storm's true scope. As far as she could see, there was nothing but angry water and sheets of rain. They were alone in an alien ocean, with no hope of rescue and supplies that would last maybe 3 days if they were lucky. The pod crashed down into the trough between waves with bone-jarring force. Elena heard something crack in the hull, and immediately alarms began sounding. They were taking on water. "Emergency systems activated," the pod's computer announced in its maddeningly calm voice. "Hull breach detected. Initiating emergency seal protocols." Elena watched helplessly as red lights flashed across the control panel. The breach was small, but in seas like this, even a tiny hole could be fatal. She needed to patch it, but that would mean leaving the creature alone and defenseless. The alien seemed to sense her dilemma. Despite its obvious pain, it managed to raise one functioning arm and point toward the emergency repair kit, mounted on the bulkhead. Elena understood immediately. The creature was telling her to go to save them both. "I'll be right back," Elena promised, squeezing the being's shoulder gently before unbuckling herself from the pilot's seat. The pod bucked and rolled as Elena fought her way to the repair kit. Water was beginning to pool in the bottom of the small chamber, and she could hear the ominous hiss of air escaping through the breach. Working by feel more than sight, she managed to locate the crack in the hull and slap an emergency patch over it. The breach sealed, but Elena knew it was only a temporary fix. The patch wouldn't hold for long in these conditions. They needed to find shelter, or at least calmer water, but in every direction there was nothing but storm. Elena returned to the pilot's seat and checked their instruments. The navigation system was mostly useless in the storm's electromagnetic interference, but she could see that they were being pushed steadily toward what the charts marked as the Titan Shallows, a region of underwater mountains that created unpredictable currents and waves. "That's either very good news or very bad news," Elena muttered, studying the display. If they could reach the lee side of one of those underwater peaks, they might find calmer water. But if they hit the rocks, they'd be smashed to pieces. The creature made a soft sound, and Elena looked down to see it watching her with those incredible eyes. There was something different about its expression now, a kind of determination that hadn't been there before. The alien was no longer just a victim to be rescued. It was trying to help. The being gestured weakly toward the communications panel, then tapped the crystalline device on its collar again. This time, instead of the complex musical language from before, the device emitted a series of precise electronic tones. Elena's eyes widened as she realized what she was hearing. "It's a navigation signal," she breathed. "You're trying to guide us somewhere." The creature's eyes confirmed her guess. Somehow this being knew something about the local area that could save them. Elena quickly adjusted their heading to follow the signal's direction, trusting in the alien's knowledge despite not understanding its source. As they changed course, Elena noticed something remarkable happening to the creature. Despite its obvious pain and paralysis, its eyes had taken on a fierce intensity. This wasn't a helpless victim anymore. This was someone fighting back against impossible odds. The sight filled Elena with renewed determination. "That's it," she said encouragingly. "Don't give up on me now. We're going to get through this together." The navigation signal led them toward what appeared to be an even more dangerous part of the storm, where the waves reached truly terrifying heights. Elena had to trust that the creature knew what it was doing, even as every instinct screamed at her to turn away from the chaos ahead. They crested another massive wave, and Elena saw something that made her heart skip. In the distance, barely visible through the rain and spray, was a dark shape that didn't move with the rhythm of the waves. Land. Or at least, something solid. The alien signal grew stronger, more urgent as they approached the mysterious object. As they drew closer, Elena could see that it wasn't land at all but some kind of artificial structure. It looked like a research station or monitoring post, built to withstand the planet's harsh conditions. "Is that where you came from?" Elena asked, though she knew the creature couldn't understand her words. But the being's expression gave her the answer. This was home, or at least safety. Getting to the structure would be the challenge. The waves around it were chaotic, breaking against its foundations in enormous sprays of foam. Elena would have to time their approach perfectly to avoid being smashed against the platform's supports. The creature seemed to understand the danger they faced. Its signal changed again, becoming a rapid series of pulses that Elena interpreted as timing markers. The alien was helping her navigate the treacherous approach, using its knowledge of the local conditions to guide them to safety. Elena gripped the controls and waited for the right moment. The creature's signal reached a crescendo, and Elena gunned the pod's engines, shooting them forward between two massive waves. For a terrifying moment, it seemed like they would overshoot the platform entirely. But then Elena saw what the creature had been guiding them toward. A small docking bay built into the structure's base. They slammed into the docking mechanism with bone-jarring force. But the magnetic clamps engaged and held them fast. For the first time in hours, their pod stopped its violent motion. They were safe, at least for the moment. Elena looked down at the creature and saw something in its eyes that she would remember for the rest of her life. It wasn't just gratitude or relief. It was respect. This alien being, who had started their encounter as a helpless victim, was looking at her as an equal, someone who had proven worthy of trust and friendship. "We made it," Elena said softly, reaching out to gently stroke the creature's soft white fur. "We actually made it." The being's response was a sound unlike any it had made before. Not a cry of pain or fear, but something that could only be described as a purr of contentment. Whatever species this creature belonged to, it had just learned something important about humans, that they would risk everything to save a stranger, even when that stranger wasn't human at all. The musical communication continued for several minutes, and Elena watched Keth's expression grow increasingly troubled. The alien's responses were weak but urgent, clearly trying to explain something complex to whoever was on the other end of the transmission. "What are they saying?" Elena asked when the communication finally ended. Keth's eyes were filled with worry. "Rescue fleet approaching. But not happy. They detected human technology in station. Think I have been compromised." Elena felt her stomach drop. "Compromised how?" "They believe you have taken me prisoner, that you forced me to bring you here." Keth struggled to sit up straighter on the medical table, wincing with pain. "My people. They have heard stories about human aggression. They fear you will use me to learn our secrets." "But that's not what happened," Elena protested. "You guided us here. You saved us, I know this. You know this. But proving it to my people," Keth shook its head sadly, "will be very difficult. They see only what their fear tells them to see." Elena began pacing the medical bay, her mind racing. After everything they'd been through, after the trust and friendship they'd built, the idea that Keth's people would see her as some kind of captor was infuriating. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. "Perhaps 1 hour," Keth replied. "Fleet commander is my sister, Zara. She will want to extract me immediately and eliminate any threats." Elena stopped pacing. "Eliminate threats? You mean me?" Keth's silence was answer enough. Elena looked around the medical bay, noting the various alien technologies that surrounded them. An idea began to form in her mind, crazy and dangerous, but potentially their only hope. "Keth, this medical equipment, can it record memories? Show what actually happened?" Keth's eyes widened with understanding. "Yes, but process is very dangerous for non-compatible species. Your human neural patterns might not survive interface, but it would show the truth. Your people would see exactly what happened on the ship in the storm." "Yes," Keth said reluctantly. "But Elena, if process goes wrong, you could die, or worse, you could lose your mind entirely." Elena had already made her decision. "Set it up." "No." Keth's voice was stronger than it had been since the rescue. I will not allow you to risk your life again. You have done enough, have I? Elena asked. Because from where I'm standing, if your people take you away and decide humans are a threat, then everything we've accomplished here dies with us. How many others of your kind are watching humanity right now? How many first contact scenarios are waiting to happen? Keth was quiet, clearly struggling with the implications of Elena's words. Elena continued. You said your people sent you to learn the truth about humans. Well, this is the truth. We don't just help people when it's safe or convenient. We help because it's right, even when it might cost us everything. The alien's large eyes filled with what Elena could only describe as tears. You truly are everything the stories claimed and more. Then help me prove it to your sister. Keth was silent for a long moment, then began operating the medical equipment with newfound determination. If we do this, you must understand. The interface will share everything. Not just memories of recent events, but deeper thoughts, emotions, intentions. My people will see into your very soul. Good, Elena said simply. Let them see who we really are. The preparation took nearly 30 minutes. Keth carefully calibrated the neural interface to accommodate human brain patterns, making adjustments that would normally require weeks of testing. Helena could see the strain the effort was putting on the still recovering alien, but Keth refused to rest. There, Keth said finally, best I can do with available time. But Elena, once we begin, there is no stopping. Process must run to completion, or damage will be irreversible. Elena nodded and lay down on the examination table beside Keth's stretcher. The neural interface descended from the ceiling, a complex array of crystalline sensors that would soon be reading her thoughts and memories. Elena, Keth said softly, whatever happens, know that you have already changed everything. My people will never again be able to dismiss humans as primitive or violent. You have shown us what true nobility looks like. The interface activated and Elena felt a strange tingling sensation as the alien technology began mapping her neural pathways. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced, a feeling of her thoughts being gently examined and catalogued. Through the shared connection, Elena could suddenly sense Keth's presence in her mind. Not invasive or threatening, but warm and comforting, like having a trusted friend standing beside her in the darkness. She felt Keth guide her consciousness back to the moment on the sinking ship, when she first heard the alien's cries for help. Together they relived the entire sequence of events, but now Elena could feel Keth's perspective as well. The alien's initial terror, its amazement at Elena's willingness to risk everything for a stranger, its growing trust and admiration. The memory sharing continued through their escape from the ship, the harrowing journey through the storm, and their arrival at the station. Elena was amazed to experience how the events had appeared from Keth's point of view. What she had seen as simple human decency, Keth had perceived as acts of transcendent courage and compassion. As the process neared completion, Elena became aware of another presence in the neural link. Someone else was observing their shared memories, someone with a mental signature similar to Keth's but harder, more suspicious. Zara, Keth's mental voice explained, my sister. She is seeing everything. Elena tried to project her thoughts directly to this new presence, hoping to convey her peaceful intentions. To her surprise, she received a response, alien but unmistakably emotional. Shock, disbelief, and slowly, grudging respect. The neural interface finally powered down, leaving Elena feeling drained but oddly exhilarated. She had just shared her mind with beings from another world, and they had seen the truth of human nature laid bare. It is done, Keth said, its voice filled with exhaustion and hope. Now we wait to see what my people decide. Through the station's viewports, Elena could see lights approaching through the storm. The alien rescue fleet had arrived, and with it the first official contact between humanity and Keth's species. Elena reached out and gently took one of Keth's hands in hers. Whatever happens next, I'm glad we found each other. As am I, Keth replied. And I believe this is only the beginning. The docking bay filled with the sound of alien ships making contact with the station. Elena could hear the subtle vibrations through the hull as multiple vessels attached themselves to various ports around the facility. Through the neural link she had shared with Keth, she had glimpsed enough of their technology to know that these ships were far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. How many? Elena asked, trying to keep the nervousness out of her voice. 3 ships, Keth replied, monitoring displays that had activated automatically. 37 of my people, more than enough to handle any perceived threat. Elena nodded grimly. If Keth's people decided she was dangerous, no amount of fighting would save her. Her only hope lay in the memories they had shared, and in the bond of trust she had built with Keth. The medical bay doors suddenly slid open with a soft hiss. Elena's breath caught as she got her first look at Keth's people. They moved with fluid grace, their bodies covered in fur that ranged from deep black to silver gray. All of them wore form-fitting suits that seemed to be part clothing, part technology, with glowing elements that pulsed in rhythm with their movements. But it was their leader who commanded Elena's immediate attention. The being at the front of the group was clearly female, with the same general build as Keth but smaller and more compact. Her fur was a striking dark gray marked with intricate silver patterns, and her eyes held an intelligence that was both fierce and calculating. Zara, Keth said weakly, attempting to sit up straighter. Sister. Zara's gaze flicked between Keth and Elena could see the complex emotions playing across the alien's features. Relief at finding her brother alive, suspicion about Elena's presence, and something else, confusion, perhaps even uncertainty. Zara spoke in the musical language of her people, and Elena watched Keth's expression grow more hopeful as he responded. The conversation continued for several minutes, with other members of the rescue team occasionally adding their own observations. Elena noticed that several of them kept looking at her with expressions that seemed less hostile than she had expected. Finally, Zara turned to address Elena directly. When she spoke, her words were in heavily accented but clear English. Human Elena Rodriguez, she said formally, I have experienced your memories through the neural link. This is not what I expected to find. Elena inclined her head respectfully. I hope what you saw helps you understand that I mean no harm to Keth or your people. More than that, Zara replied, her tone softening slightly. What you did, it challenges everything we believed about your species. No being of any race we know would risk what you risked for a stranger. One of the other aliens stepped forward and spoke rapidly in their own language. Zara listened, then turned back to Elena with what might have been embarrassment. My science officer reminds me that our observations of human behavior have been incomplete. We have watched your wars, your conflicts, your competition for resources. We did not think to look for this. You saw what you expected to see, Elena said gently. We all do that sometimes, but humans are complicated. Yes, we fight and compete, but we also sacrifice and protect. Sometimes we do terrible things, but sometimes we do things that surprise even ourselves. Keth managed to prop himself up on his elbows. Sister, this human saved my life at great risk to her own. When her ship was sinking, when death was certain, she chose to come for me. And when we were trapped in the storm, she shared her air, her warmth, her hope. Zara studied Elena with those penetrating eyes. In the memory sharing, I felt your emotions during the rescue. Fear, yes, but also determination, and something else. What is the human word? Joy? Elena thought about it for a moment. Joy in helping someone who needed it. Joy in making a connection across species barriers. Joy in proving that differences don't have to mean conflict. This concept is difficult for my people to understand, Zara admitted. We are a cautious species. We observe, we analyze, we prepare for every possibility. But you acted on instinct, on emotion. By all logic, you should have died in that storm. Maybe, Elena agreed. But some things are worth the risk. Zara was quiet for a long moment, then made a gesture to her team. They immediately began setting up additional medical equipment around Keth's stretcher, working with practiced efficiency to supplement the station's systems. Your actions have created complications, Zara said as she supervised the medical work. My people will need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about humanity. This will not be easy for us. Change never is, Elena replied. But the alternative is remaining afraid of each other forever. Indeed. Zara paused in her work and looked directly at Elena. The neural link shared more than just recent memories. I saw glimpses of your entire life, your experiences, your dreams. You humans, you have such short lives, yet you fill them with such intensity. Elena felt a moment of vertigo at the realization that this alien being had seen into her very soul. What did you think of what you saw? I think, Zara said slowly, that my brother was right. The stories about humans are insufficient. Reality is far more complex and inspiring than we imagined. Keth's vital signs improved dramatically as the new medical equipment took over his care. Elena could see that his paralysis was already beginning to fade, nerve connections re-establishing themselves under the influence of the advanced alien technology. The physical damage will heal completely, Zara announced with obvious relief. But the other changes, those will be permanent. What other changes? Elena asked. By sharing the neural link with you, my brother has been altered. Some of your neural patterns have integrated with his own. He will always carry a part of your mind with him, just as you will carry a part of his. Elena looked at Keth in amazement. Is that why I can still sense your emotions? Keth nodded, his eyes bright with wonder. We are connected now, across species, across the barriers that have separated our peoples. This has never happened before in recorded history. It changes everything, Zara said, and Elena could hear the awe in her voice. When my brother returns home, when he shares this experience with our people, they will see that humans are not just another species to be studied. You are potential partners, allies, friends. Elena felt tears welling up in her eyes. All of this from one moment of choosing to help instead of looking away. Not just one moment, Keth corrected gently. Many moments. Every time you could have chosen safety over compassion, you chose compassion. Every time you could have given up, you chose hope. That is what makes humans remarkable. Zara activated a communication device and began speaking rapidly in her own language. Elena could tell she was making some kind of formal report, probably to their homeworld. When she finished, she turned back to Elena with an expression that was unmistakably a smile. I have just informed our High Council that first contact with humanity is no longer a question of if, but when and how. And I have recommended that, when we make ourselves known to your people, we do so as friends, not as observers. Elena realized that this moment was far bigger than just her own survival, or even Keth's rescue. This was the beginning of a new chapter in human history, one where humanity would no longer be alone in the universe. Captain Rodriguez, Zara, said formally, on behalf of the Catherian Confederation, I extend an invitation for you to accompany us when we make formal contact with your leaders. Your voice will be needed to help both our peoples understand what we can achieve together. Elena looked at Keth, still recovering but now filled with hope and excitement for the future. She thought about her crew, hopefully safe in their life pods, about humanity as a whole, about to discover they were part of a much larger galactic community. I accept, Elena said simply. But first we need to find my crew. They're still out there in the storm. Already being done, Zara assured her. Our ships are conducting search and rescue operations. Your people will be safe. As if to confirm her words, one of Zara's team members reported successfully locating and retrieving the other life pods. Elena's crew was alive, though probably very confused about their alien rescuers. They're going to have questions, Elena said with a slight smile. As will your entire species, Keth observed. Are you ready for that responsibility? Elena looked around the medical bay, at the advanced alien technology, at beings from another world who had just become humanity's first extraterrestrial friends. She thought about the choice she had made in the flooded cargo hold, the simple decision to help someone in need. I think, Elena said finally, that humanity is ready for anything, as long as we face it together. Keth's hand found hers, and, through their neural link, Elena felt his absolute faith in the future they would build together. Two species no longer strangers, bound by the most powerful force in the universe, the choice to care for one another. The storm outside was finally beginning to calm, and through the station's viewports, Elena could see the first hints of sunlight breaking through the clouds. A new day was dawning, not just on Kepler 442b, but for all of humanity. And it had all started with a cry for help in the darkness, and a human who chose to answer.